The micro-learning project is an opportunity for us to rediscover and discover skills, to connect, and to learn together. Today is the final day in team building, and the goal for today was to do a wrap-up of the micro-learning project and to provide some recommendations. And so I'm really excited to go back and refresh you on some of the key topics that actually were discussed as we began this program. And so on week one, we actually had a chance to hear from Rose, and she talked about Dare to Lead. And just to highlight a few points that Rose wanted to leave you with, under Dare to Lead, she talked about armored leadership versus daring leadership. And so she asked that you consider these questions when you think about what it means to lead as an armored leader. What are your most armored traits? What are your two most daring traits? And what is one commitment you're willing to make that would lead itself to making you a more daring leader and improving the leadership culture? And so important to consider who you are, what you are, and how do you help your organization grow and develop? And when we think about team building, these are great questions to ask when you're developing your personal leadership and your leadership around your team. And there's a lot on the slide, but this is really important because she talked about rumble skills. And this rumble skill is about the discussions and the conversations or meetings defined by our commitment to them. How do you lean in to be more vulnerable in these conversations? How do you stay curious and generous? How do you stick and stay in the messy middle of problems and identify the issues and how to solve them? And again, if you think about the core of all of these, it builds so greatly on everything this micro-learning project has delivered to you in the last 4 weeks. How do you take a break and circle back when necessary? So important in the middle of a conversation, especially if it's messy, to take a few minutes and then come back. And then how do you be fearless? Own what you're responsible for in the conversation. Own your responsibility in the relationship. Own your responsibility in the team. And how do you listen with the same passion with which you want to be heard? And listening is one of those core skills because we spend a lot of time talking, but how much do we listen? And for a team to be effective, they really need to learn to listen to each other and to hear each other from a space of being vulnerable and being curious. So those were the highlights for this wonderful Dare to Lead that was our first week. In the second week, we had Ashley talking about emotional intelligence. And again, same points. You know, first use questions and reflection to get to know your own habits and tendencies. Once you build that type of self-awareness, you can brainstorm your own questions with the goal of keeping your emotions in balance. And so it's like the next time you're tempted to speak out or make a off-color remark or to say something that wouldn't easily allow you to come back, she gave you 3 questions that you should ask yourself. Does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? And does this need to be said by me now? And again, very critical when you think about even the Dare to Lead material. How do we engage with our team members? Are we aware of ourselves? The best way to be an effective team member is to be very conscious of our own behavior, to be very aware of our impact on people. And if we're not always aware, the most beautiful part about being a part of the team is to ask our team members to help us, to support us. And then again, as we are processing, ask ourselves again, as she said, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? And does this need to be said by me now? And the more self-aware you become, the more you can process that before you speak. And sometimes you might have to ask for forgiveness or in the way in which you communicate with other people to continue to grow. So emotional intelligence then built the pathway for Kate as she talked about healthy dialogue, or as some people call it, crucial conversations. And so there were 2 points that she wanted to make sure that you remembered and that stood out, is that it's so important to start with the heart. Start with yourself. Create a space where a healthy dialogue can flow. And keep your motives in mind. Again, why are we saying this? Why are we doing this? What might be the outcome? How might someone receive this? And how might I create this space where someone feels safe enough to have a conversation with me, even if it's difficult? And it goes back again to being willing to be vulnerable and willing to be open and willing to really listen. And the next point is, how do I establish safety? And it says, when others move to silence or violence, we must step out and make it safe. You know, what do you say to yourself during this time? What questions are you asking? How do you keep the space still open to communicate without feeling offended or uncomfortable? And if it's necessary, how do you step out of that conversation so that you can give yourselves time and energy to come back in and continue the conversation? Because the goal is to maintain the relationship. The goal is to maintain your dignity and your respect, but without losing the ability to be vulnerable to actually listen. And then establishing safety, you know, through mutual purpose and mutual respect. And it allows us to, you know, bring diverse ideas to the table and to lean into the conversation. We don't always use the word safety, but it is quite a powerful word. Oops, excuse me. It is quite a powerful word. And I think it's really powerful because unless people feel safe and they can feel vulnerable, none of these conversations, our ability to bring our best emotional self and our willingness, I just want to keep hitting these screens, sorry, and our willingness to keep communicating is going to be difficult. So very critical point. And then we got to everything related to teams. And teams started off by talking about what a healthy organization actually looks like. And the point here I really want to highlight is it says integrates employees' well-being into its business objectives and reinforces it through its practices. Everything that we've been talking about during this micro-learning project has been about integrating employees' well-being. The healthier the environment, the safer the environment, the better communication we have, the more we're aware of our emotional intelligence, the more conversations we may have around the rumbling, the less the environment doesn't feel like a place we want to work. And we really want individuals to feel good about where they work and who they are so that they can help create teams that are effective. And the more effective the team is, the healthier the organization actually is. And so that has been the whole building block to get us to organizational health. And then I talked about the 9 pillars for organizational health. And all of these are extremely important. And as all of us would share with you, everything we've been talking about for the last month, you can most definitely dive into deeper if you attend any of our leadership development classes. And so organizational health, we spend a lot of time focusing on which area is most important to you, but the grounding of all of these is actually culture. Because if the culture is safe, if the culture allows me to have these difficult conversations, if the culture allows me to bring my whole self, if the culture respects and values who I am, and what I can bring, the culture then sets the stage for teams to be successful and for teams to help achieve the goals and objectives. And we all have our 2030 strategy plan from President Ryan. And so for us to help achieve those goals, these things need to be in place. And then we talked about team member character. And this was just a little test that we did to figure out where we fit in terms of our personality and our style. But the key point here is that each of us as individuals may fit into any of these categories, but the truth of who we are allows each of those to manifest. And so every team has different personalities and styles and different levels of contribution. And if we can value the contribution of the person who's innovative and creative or focused and the team driver and the intellectual powerhouse, how do you as a team strengthen those skills for each and every one of your team members, but recognizes and rewarding people for those? And if you think about it, it also allows us to have a very different conversation with our team members if we're having more skill-based conversations around what they can do better, how they can improve, or how we can nurture and develop them. But we celebrate each and every one of these personalities and these skill sets just so that we can be successful and create teams that are more powerful. And then I shared the things that make a team highly effective. And it spans everything from, again, understanding your team is what we've been talking about, making sure that everyone is working toward the same goal. And one of the tips in that was ask everybody on your team to write down what is the goal of our team or our organization. And if you find that you get 6 different answers, it presents a great opportunity to make sure everybody is focused on one goal. Having extensive discussions and ensuring that everyone gets to contribute, because showing value is a way of inviting everyone in, and it says even introverts. But we also want to make sure everybody's invited in, because when we don't hear everyone's voice, we don't know if that creates opportunities for people to leave a room and have a secondary conversation. And then that means we didn't invite in conflict, which we need to include in our meetings. Again, making sure everybody carries his weight, there's great trust, people are free to express themselves, and that no individual is more important than the team. Very critical, because people are successful at different levels and bring different skills, but you don't get half of a pizza. You want a whole pie that includes all the gifts and talents of everyone who's on the team. And then I talked about the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and the things that cause dysfunction are a lack of trust, the fear of conflict, a lack of commitment, avoidance of team accountability, and an inattention to results. And so as we have been talking since this began, you should again see a theme go through, and trust is one of those critical factors. If you don't invite in conflict, you don't have conversations around conflict, people will resolve conflict in their own way, and it may not be in the best interest of the team. And that will create a lack of commitment. People will show up to work, but they won't actually be working. And then people not being accountable for their team and their responsibility, because after a while, lack of commitment means I'm not valued, I'm not respected, I don't belong here. And so then I'm not accountable. And then I stop paying attention to the results. And then we spent a moment on what does it mean to be inclusive? Very critical, because if we can't invite everyone in to the conversation, they don't feel valued and respected, they won't participate, and then the team doesn't get to be its very best. And so this is really about treating everyone, I love this, with equivalent consideration, the same consideration we give or want for ourselves, and that we seek out people, we actively connect with them, we listen, we accept them for who they are, and then we invite them into our lives. And so if there's no other definition that you've ever heard for inclusive teams, I think this is most powerful, because the point is equivalent consideration, and then inviting people in. And then you want individuals to feel like they can work to create their great success. My team member, Kate, had this quote in Healthy Dialogue, and I thought it was really powerful. The only person you can continue to inspire, prod, and shape with any degree of success is yourself. And so this is about doing your own individual work, because again, the more you work on yourself as a team member, the better the team becomes, the more you invite in change, and the more you encourage others to actually do the same. And ultimately, everything that we have actually talked about, all the work that has gone on in the last 4 weeks, has been about the work as the individual, but the work that the individual does then supports creating an outstanding team. And so this is about how do you create championship teams. And it says in here, and you'll see again, the theme is continued, that the team is about building a culture that is conducive to people being themselves, caring about one another, and being willing and able to do great work together. And so we hope that in this last month, that everything we have shared with you in snippets has been something that you can take the information and you can grow and you can utilize it. We hope that you have found some tool, some nugget that might encourage you or your team to come and join us in one of our learning and development classes. We hope that we have inspired you to think differently, see something differently, feel differently, and to honestly feel like you can make a difference, because UVA is only going to be successful when an individual has committed to making those changes, and then a team has committed to making those changes to make the environment a place where everyone wants to work. And we want UVA to be a place known for retaining the best and brightest and inspiring the best and brightest to continue to grow. So on behalf of all of us in Learning and Development, we thank you for joining us for the last 4 weeks for the Micro Learning Project, and we look forward to seeing each and every one of you in one of our classes. Thank you so much. Goodbye.